Hi guys, I'm Woodcraft Hamster and I thought I'd do another quick video for you today. And the topic I want to cover is building your own sword sharpening kit. Now I did another video recently about sharpening a sword by hand. That's using whetstones and some emery cloth and that kind of thing. And that's fine if you've got either a blunt sword or if you've got a sword that's kind of really badly damaged and that kind of thing, and you really need to sort of grind away a little bit of that metal to get back to a proper edge. But if you've got a sword that you've already sharpened or that's come sharp and you've been using it for cutting and it just gets a little bit blunt and you want to sort of touch it up and just get it back to where it should be, there's a really cheap, inexpensive piece of kit that you can make yourself from sort of very common materials, and that's what I'm going to be looking at today. So basically all it really involves is a small piece of wood, one of these kind of foam kitchen dishwashing pads, and either sandpaper or emery cloth, depending on how far you want to go. So what I'm going to do, guys, I'm just going to move the camera a little bit closer in and I'll show you how we put this together. Right then guys, so this is what we're going to be using, and what I have here is just a small piece of off-cut wood. It was part of, I think, some packaging for something that I salvaged, and really this is going to be the base of what we're going to be using. And what I need to do is take this little washing foam pad thing, and I'll explain why we're going to be using this in a second, just kind of level it up and cut down the side of it so that it matches in line with our piece of wood. Doesn't matter if it's not entirely perfect. And there we go. So I now have a piece of foam that sits squarely on top of this piece of wood, and all I'm going to do is cover this in some super glue. You can use any type of glue for this. Super glue is just kind of what I had to hand. You want to make sure you get it down the edges so it doesn't start to sort of roll off, and then a little bit in the center. Let's get a little bit more out of that, a bit more from the end. Very small thing of super glue I had handy. And then literally we're going to put that over on the other side, hold it down and just wait for it to adhere. Now while that's sticking, I'll explain why we're using this little pad. And essentially, because a sword blade is generally not a perfect sort of acute angle, it tends to be a little bit rounded, what we're going to do is on top of this we're going to put our sandpaper or our emery cloth, and then we're going to put the sword on it. Unlike sharpening on a stone where you take, I'll use these scissors as an example, where you normally take the knife or sword edge on a stone and you push forwards, we're actually going to be putting the sword at the end, and we're going to start at a fairly low, let me move this around so you can see, so we're going to start at a fairly low angle, bring it back, and as we get towards the end we're just going to very lightly sort of increase. I'm over exaggerating this, but we're going to bring the angle up, and what we're trying to do is keep that slightly curved angle on the sword blade where the two edges on either side meet. So that is starting to stick down. While that's doing it, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a piece of emery cloth. Now this is a 800 grit emery cloth. I've got some 240 grit regular sandpaper here as well. Now the sword I'm going to be demonstrating this with today is already pretty sharp, so I don't need to go down as low as 240. And again, all we're going to do is take our piece of paper, line it up, and again it doesn't have to be entirely exact, you just want it roughly the right size. And you've now got a nice strip. Now I'm going to cut this down again just so that it fits nicely directly on top of here. And you've got a couple of options here. You can either stick this down, or you can make it a little bit longer and maybe have one side sort of wrap under here like so, and then stick the other end down. Alternatively, you could also use maybe a drawing pin or something like that and pin one end up here and one end down the bottom. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it. What I'll probably do is stick this down. You can remove it afterwards, you just sort of peel it off, you may get a few little bits that stick. It's not a huge deal, to be perfectly honest. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to let this set, I'll stick this piece down and I'll come back and I'll show you how it is we use this with the sword. So there we go guys, we're all finished. I've actually just put the piece of wood in my holder for my waterstones, though to be honest I've left a little lip on the end here, so what you can do with this is you can put a small hole in it and you can screw it into your carving stump or your workbench. You can clamp it into a vise. You can do pretty much anything you like with it. You could even sort of put some little rubber sticky feet on there so you can put it on a work surface and it won't move around. The thing is, you just want to make sure it doesn't move, same as you would with any kind of sharpening stone. Now this sword, which you can't actually quite get in shot at the moment. This is my 9th century Viking sword. You may have seen this in a couple of other videos. What I want to do, now I've refined this edge quite a bit recently, and hopefully you can kind of see that on the camera there. But what I want to do for the purpose of this video, and again please remember to wear gloves if you are sharpening anything like this, rather than trying to push this against the emery paper, because there's absolutely no need to, and all you're going to end up doing is cutting into that paper. What you want to do is start down the end here, find that sort of bevel point. You don't want to go too acute on this, so you want to start fairly flat and bring the sword backwards, and just sort of as you're getting sort of towards 2/3 of the way to the end, just give it a slight roll upwards, and then you move along the blade. Make sure that you take all parts of the blade, or give all parts of the blade the same amount of attention, or you'll end up with blunt spots. And this will essentially help you to blend in any sharpening that you may have done on a harsher stone or a harsher grit of sandpaper. And it will also start sort of refining that edging. Now you will still need to take some emery paper on this and go sort of just up and down very, very lightly just to blend it in a little bit more, but this will help with the sharpening process no end. And again, if you've got a sword that is a little bit too blunt for something this fine, you can start off with a lighter grit of sandpaper, something like a 240 or a 320, and then work your way up. And when you start getting up to the high grits, you can either continue using sandpaper, there's no problem with it. I prefer emery paper just because it's a little bit kinder to the metal, and then as you've seen in one of my other videos, the final little bit of that is just to take a small square and just rub it up and down any marks that you've made by doing this, because you are kind of, most swords are made, although they're not wood and they don't actually have a grain, if you look closely at this sword blade, you will see what is kind of the equivalent of a grain in wood that sort of runs up and down the sword blade, and that's the direction you want to be blending in. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Right then guys, well it really is as simple as that. Only took about 5 minutes to make. You can swap over your sandpaper to either different grits, or when it starts getting a little bit sort of used or weathered, you know, you can just rip it off and replace it with a fresh piece. Again, you've got the sort of the cushion from the foam pad there, which kind of has a little bit of give in it, so you're not trying to run it along a really hard surface, and that's the important part here. Even if you're not kind of giving it that little twist at the end just to help it kind of round over, you know, that cushioning will still sort of produce that effect to a slightly lesser degree. So anyway guys, hope it was useful. Comments and questions in the box below. Hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more, and I hope you'll all join me next time. Thanks guys.